They told them the Americans would cut them open while they were still alive. They said doctors would slice and pry, like the grotesque images on the posters. So when 32 Japanese women were marched into a makeshift holding area in Okinawa one searing morning in September 1945, the whisper ran down the line like a lit fuse. Close your eyes. Don't scream. Each step toward the canvas medical tent felt like walking over the edge of a cliff. Hands trembled. Razors were clenched in sleeves. Some had already chosen death over capture. The sky above was pure, indifferent blue. Below it, 32 hearts hammered with the purest animal fear. What came next ripped the map of their world in two. The tent smelled of antiseptic and hot water, not blood. 3 American nurses in crisp white, women, alive, human, smiled haltingly and offered soap. "Wash first," their translator said, voice soft and clumsy. The idea was inconceivable, cleanliness before cruelty. Still, one by one, the women stepped forward, fingers dipping into steaming basins. Hot water on skin that had not known warmth in months unlatched something in them. Sobs broke loose that were equal parts relief and grief. The soap lathered away grime and propaganda, each scrub a tiny betrayal of every lesson they had been taught about the enemy. Inside the examination curtain, a woman named Michiko, once a telephone operator from Naha, waited for the horror she expected. Behind the screen stood Dr. Catherine Chen, an American doctor whose hands moved with calm, practiced precision. Light shined into pupils, throats were peered into, wounds cleaned and wrapped. Malnourished, infected, dehydrated, the doctor noted, then wrote prescriptions, antibiotics, vitamins, a plan to feed her properly. No scalpels, no experiments, only bandages and medicine. No one believed it at first. The gentleness felt like a trap. Still, as clean linen brushed sore skin and warm broth slid down dry throats, an impossible truth began to seep in. The enemy could also be kind. They were taken from the tent to cots in a wooden barracks that smelled of sun-warmed blankets and wood polish. For the first time in months, they had mattresses, pillows, a fan that did not whir angrily but simply hummed. An awkward young American soldier showed them the latrine, the shower, the schedule. Work from 8 to noon, meals 3 times a day, lights out at 10. No lock, he said, unsure how to offer dignity without sounding foolish. The word paid hung in the air like a strange coin from another world. Prisoners would be paid for their labor. It was an absurd, furious kindness. Work was simple at first. Hospital help, supply labeling, laundry, kitchen duty. Fumiko, a former nurse, was asked to stay in the medical tent. Michiko, who could read some English, was assigned to the supply depot, cataloging crates, translating labels. Sergeant Mitchell, a patient Midwestern man with a daughter in a graduation gown in his wallet, taught her how to inventory. He showed her photographs of an ordinary life, family, home, a photograph of a smiling girl in graduation robes, and the incongruity was searing. He handed her a chocolate bar once, an offering of something small and human. In that moment, the world tilted. An American soldier, the enemy, wanted to give a gift to her mother. The mess hall served warm rice and miso that tasted like a memory of home. So much food that tears came with every spoonful. The military canteen stocked soap, writing paper, pencils, luxuries that had been fantasies. They were allowed to write, to receive letters. When the first Red Cross envelopes arrived, Michiko's hands shook so badly she could hardly open hers. Her mother's handwriting told of raids, of hunger, of a father dead and a brother missing. The comfort of the camp collided violently with the guilt of survival. How could she eat while her family starved? How could she sleep in a clean cot while children at home begged for food? Rumors and lectures, the propaganda that had steeled them for hatred, began to crack under the weight of everyday decency. In the hospital, Fumiko helped bandage a burned young Japanese soldier, Private Tanaka, who wept not from the pain of his wounds,
but from shame for being saved by the enemy. I should have died with honor, he muttered. Dr. Chen answered simply, "We are doctors. We save lives." The line between taught duty and human compassion blurred. The women found themselves asking if honor meant death or survival, whether acceptance of help was betrayal or the only possible answer to a world emptied of choices. Each small kindness, soap, chocolate, a patient translation, a bandage, felt like a weapon aimed not at their bodies, but at their minds. The Americans were winning more than a battle. They were dismantling an entire moral architecture by treating the powerless with unbending decency. Michiko kept writing in a tiny notebook, filling pages with dates and contradictions. The day of the first wash, the first cup of real rice, the first chocolate bar, the first letter from home. She recorded confusion, the slow, painful unmaking of belief. And as the days passed, the question that haunted them all became louder. If what we were told about the enemy was false, what else had been a lie?
It was on an overcast morning, one of those gray Okinawan days where the sea breeze smelled faintly of rust and rain, that the shift became undeniable. Michiko was restocking crates in the supply tent when she heard a soft thud behind her. Private Tanaka had collapsed, delirious with fever. Training took over before thought could intervene. She knelt, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead, calling for Fumiko and Dr. Chen. As they lifted him onto a stretcher, Tanaka's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Why help me?" he whispered in a voice too thin to hold its own weight. The answer came without deliberation. "Because you're alive." It was a simple truth, but in that moment it felt like a small, quiet revolution. Later that week, the pay they earned, a few worn military bills, was exchanged in the canteen for oranges, dried fish, notebooks, and small tins of condensed milk. Gifts, offerings for families they hadn't seen in years. The women huddled together that night, crafting careful parcels to send through the new postal routes. Nothing in the camp felt quite like freedom, but the act of choosing what to send home, what small piece of hope to package into a box, gave them back a shard of themselves. Yet with each letter written, guilt pooled heavier. They were surviving under American roofs, eating American rations, receiving American medicine, while their own people starved in ruined cities. Survival began to feel like a betrayal carved into the shape of a privilege. The Americans sensed it too, the tension that lived between gratitude and grief. Sergeant Mitchell once found Michiko sitting alone on the barrack steps, staring at the dusk. "Does this place trouble you?" he asked gently. She didn't answer first. She didn't know how to explain that kindness could hurt, that comfort could wound. Instead, she asked, "Why are you kind to us?" He paused, searching for something truer than duty. He said, "War teaches people to hate strangers. Peace teaches us to see people again." It wasn't enough to solve her conflict, but it was enough to shift the ground she stood on. Weeks folded into months, rotations changed, new supplies came in, new illnesses were treated, new letters arrived, some joyful, some shattering. One winter afternoon, as the first chills settled over the camp, the women were gathered and told that their release was near. The war had ended months earlier, but the machinery of repatriation churned slowly. Now, finally, they would go home. The announcement struck like a stone dropped into still water, rings of shock, relief, panic, disbelief spreading outward. Home meant freedom, but also ruin. Home meant facing the ghosts they had left behind. As departure day approached, the Americans offered the women a small farewell ceremony, a gesture simple, awkward, earnest. Long tables were set up outside the barracks. Bowls of hot soup steamed in the cool air. Dr. Chen handed out small first aid packets. Sergeant Mitchell distributed envelopes containing the last of their earned wages. One by one, the women bowed, a deep, trembling bow, not of subservience, but of recognition. These were the people who had tended their wounds, who had contradicted every fear planted in them since childhood, who had shown them that even in the aftermath of devastation, gentleness could endure. The transport trucks rolled out at dawn. As they climbed aboard, the women looked back at the camp, its fences, its barracks, its familiar pathways where their beliefs had been dismantled and rebuilt into something more complicated, more painful, and more honest. The engine rumbled, dust rose, faces blurred behind the haze. It was Fumiko who spoke what they all felt. "We came here believing we would die. We are leaving because they chose to keep us alive." Michiko watched the camp shrink into the horizon and realized that she no longer knew what she believed about enemies or allies, about honor or surrender, about what it meant to be loyal to a nation, or loyal to the simple fact of being human. She only knew that the world was larger and more contradictory than she had ever been permitted to imagine. The road ahead snaked toward a homeland changed beyond recognition. But she carried with her a truth she could no longer unlearn. Kindness had crossed the threshold of war, and once seen, it could not be unseen. The trucks rumbled on, carrying 32 women towards an uncertain future. Women reshaped not by violence, but by a series of unexpected mercies. And in the battered silence of a country staggering back to life, those mercies would ripple outward, echoing in ways none of them, not even Michiko, could yet understand.